Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Sunday chat today is, I'll get to that in a minute. Why am I doing it with the kit on? There's something wrong. And I had a bad night, that's irrelevant, but as a consequence, I put the TV on to watch a bit of news and fell sound asleep. And I've just woken up basically. It's later in the day than I planned, so be it, that's not a problem. But in the house, it's around 23-24 degrees, which is a little warmer than I like during the day, but you know, in just a shirt, it's okay. And as I say, it's a little warmer than I would like, but it'll do fine. It's not excessively warm. And I've just come out here, and the temperature drops as I walk through the door. And yet, my extractor and inlet fans are on. There's something wrong out here. I mean, that gadget says it's 28. It's not. This is, hang on, I'm standing in the cool air from that. This is not 28 degrees. It's about 26, something like that. So the gadget for my inlet and my extractor fan has got to go. So just before I came out here, because I've been back in and come back out, it was important for me to get this right. 26 is actually good, but I don't like gadgets that are potentially causing problems. So I've ordered another one of those Inkbird ones, like the two new ones I got a while ago. Right, now we can turn the kit off. One and then these two. Right, now that gadget over in the corner there, the cheap and cheerful, that's controlling the inlet and the extractor fan, is reading 32 degrees. It's far from if it was 32 degrees in here, I probably wouldn't be in here. That's you know. Right, today's chat is not going to be the one I thought about. In fact, this chat is Michael McCarthy's fault in a comment he's only just made on a previous video. So it's all your fault, Michael. And it's I'm not going to do it exactly as suggested, but what happens if some sort of major change in your life, or even a disaster of some sort, befalls you, and at very short notice you've got to seriously downsize your collection. You know, the suggestion was, if I had to cut my collection to 10 orchids, what would they be? The real question for me would not be what would they be, it would be where are they going to be first and foremost, and the reason, you know, why have I suddenly got to get rid of a load of orchids. But why I wanted to talk about that is because there is a reality there. As people who've been around my channel for quite a while know, this is not my house, it's my mum's. And like all of us, people don't live forever. There will come a time when this house has to be sold and I've got to get out. And that could happen quite suddenly. My mum's coming up to 90. Yeah? So, you know, literally, within a very short space of time, I could find myself suddenly in a position where this is no longer going to be where I live. And I've got to pack up and get out and go off somewhere else. And packing this lot up and going off somewhere else with it would mean that the somewhere else I'm going to would have somewhere to accommodate all these plants. Yeah? So I may have to do a major downsize simply on the grounds that there's a lot of the stuff in here will not grow in a house. Or it would, but it wouldn't last long. My plan A is to actually move to Wales. I've got two choices. I can rent and stay in this area. I've got no ties in this area whatsoever, apart from my two orchid societies and the friends I've made at those two places. Those had to be started from scratch. That's possible to do again. You know, I'd miss quite a few people, but you know, needs must. The idea is to, if I've got to rent somewhere, then I'd have to rent somewhere with all the facilities that this house has got, and I'd want to be near enough to be able to get to Hannah if and when I'm allowed to. So that limits the part of the country to down the south, down here. And everywhere's very expensive. This is not a cheap area of the country. The only cheaper areas in this country are right up north, like where my youngest son lives, where, you know. Down here, where I live, the cheapest house you'd probably get in this area around here would be, house I mean, you know, not a one-bedroom flat or apartment, I mean an actual house with a little bit of land of some description. You're looking at £270,000. Up where my son lives, you could get a house same size as this, large rooms with garden and stuff like that, for about £50,000. That's the difference in the price in the different parts of the country. There is only one other part of the country where you can get cheap property, and that's not this country, it's in Wales. Parts of Wales have still got very cheap properties. They're not the most salubrious areas, and in some cases I know them personally, and they're a bit iffy sometimes, but they're friendly iffy, if you know what I mean. So plan A is to go to Wales and buy a property with the funds I get from this when it's sold. I would then own my own house, and I can then do as I please with it. And the first job would be make sure that house has a suitable outdoor space at the back, because a lot of the houses in Wales, you open the back door and they go like that, or they go like that. They're all built in valleys and on hillsides. It's a hilly, mountainous place. Yeah, it's beautiful scenery. But yeah, it would have to have a suitable flat area out the back to enable some sort of construction to be made to have another grow room. I've hopefully got still quite a few years left in me where this is going to be my hobby. But it would have to be a property, ideally with a conservatory already built, that all I've got to do is what I did to this conversion job. But that's plan A. Also, the beauty of moving to Wales is there are large parts of Wales I know quite well. I did an awful lot of work. I even lived there for a while. So there's that side of things. And the other thing is, as long as it's not too far away from the motorway heads straight to where my daughter lives. So the access would still be there. The distance would be greater, but you can move on a motorway. The roads that I have to travel on to get to where she lives now, you're lucky to average 40. Quite honestly, and sometimes it's worse than that. Whereas obviously, you know, on a motorway, most of the time you can average 70, and you gobble up the miles. And the fuel, but yeah, I don't worry about that. So yeah, if I had to downsize and just keep a small proportion, well, like I said, if I was going to an environment where something like this could be created, so it might have to be a standalone greenhouse next time round, because there isn't a way of attaching anything to the house like this is. This to me is a perfect environment because it's part of the house. I don't have to go out to it. You know, connections for electric and everything, they're here. So to me that's a major bonus. Plus I can see all my plants. You know, I mean, my dining table's just there. When I'm sitting down having a meal, I'm looking at all my blooms, you know. So that's to me is a major bonus. A standalone greenhouse would be second choice. And for a while I might have neither. So all of the plants would have to stay in the property I moved into. So you're looking at probably wanting to do some decorations and stuff like that. Now, all of these plants could just be put in a bedroom with all the shelving and everything like that, yeah? Temporarily just in a bedroom. I could get the grow lights out and have some supplemental lighting temporarily. So it could be done. It would be uncomfortable, but it would do temporarily until I got something sorted out. If, however, due to some sort of physical injury or something like that, I had to downsize because I physically couldn't look after the plants and still had to change properties, and they had to live in the house. The first major decision is which of these plants would carry on growing reasonably well in a normal house environment where the humidity is just going to be lower, you know, light levels are not going to be as good, far less control. What would possibly do okay? It would depend how close to windows I could get, their aspect, whether they face north, south, east, west, all that sort of stuff. But there's quite a bit in here, we just have to go. Some of the cattleyas, they'll be all right in the house. Some of the dendrobiums would be okay, the nobilies would be okay. The winter resters won't. They're not going to do very well. You know, some of my favourites are in there too. So it would be a major decision. And I don't have to make it now. But one day I might have to. So have you got a backup plan? You know, if, you know, I mean, you perish the thought, life is life and all this, that and the other. But you had a bad accident or something or other and, you know, ended up in a wheelchair. There's only so much you can do. You know, so have you got a backup plan for your orchids? First of all, if you had some sort of an emergency and got rushed into hospital and didn't know how long you were going to stay there, have you got a person who can come and sort your plants out? Do they know who they are? Do they know they've been selected? Oi, you, do the plants. And on what basis? You know, if I was out and had a problem and got rushed into hospital, first of all, nobody can get in here because it's locked. My mum's got a key. I think my sister might have. I'm not sure. But yeah, you know, access to your property if you're the only one. If there's somebody else living there, then that's not a problem. But yeah, a backup plan for your precious babies. And I don't know what I would keep. I'd have to make those decisions. Some of the oncidiums would be fine in the house. They might not grow quite as well as they do out here, but they would be okay. Survive. This flipping great brassia here, that would grow in a house. Need a room to itself, wouldn't it? There is a bloom open, but I'm not getting it down for one bloom. There'll be more soon. Looking at the one that's open on that particular spike, it's the first one, as one would expect. And the next one is going to follow very quickly. And looking at the size of the bud that's about to open, the others are not. So I'm going to end up with one or two blooms open for a while, and then the rest will all follow on. We'll look at it then. I haven't actually had a taste of this yet. Yeah, I've had worse. Can't remember when, but the old jokes are the best ones. But we didn't get to look at this one, I said. This is my Odontoglossum naevium. Now, you probably won't be able to get this in a position to do it justice, because it's an individual bloom level, this one, and you need to be able to look at it from a certain angle. It looks like this one would be a good one to look at. But what you're looking at here is a very delicate spotty patterning, a touch of yellow in the middle, almost pure white, but not quite. There's an element of creaminess there. But the shape, the frilly, almost distorted shape of the blooms, not one of them is the same. They are all shaped slightly differently in the way that the tips of the petals or sepals might hook towards the front, towards the back, out to one side. So they're all distorted slightly differently, but nonetheless very attractive. Well, this would grow in a house, and I'd keep this because I really, really like those blooms. Don't have to be shouting loud. Sometimes the delicate is, I don't think it's fragrant. Oh, it is, slightly. What of? Don't know. I'm not very good with words to go with fragrances. Often what I do is I look them up and see what other people have said they smell like and think, well, they're probably right, we use those words. I'm just not very good at putting the words to them. Yeah, I would try and keep a couple of Tolumnias. They are Oncidium types at the end of the day, but they're up the higher light end. So like I said, it would depend where they were going to be living. I mean, in a south-facing window, you've got the light. In fact, you'd have too much this time of year. So you'd have to shade, but at least it's there. And then there, right in that window during the winter, there would be enough light for them to carry on growing. And being in the house, they'd have temperature. So I wouldn't have the cold winter. If I wanted those that would prefer the cooler temperatures, perhaps I could use a north-facing room that never gets any sun in the window. And without any central heating of any kind, that's going to stay quite cool a lot of the time. So, that's something I can't do in here until winter comes. I can't do cool, not with the sun on the glass. It's not going to happen. But, yeah. So, wasn't anything else open, I don't think. I'll show you this latest Tolumnia that's opened recently on the grounds. We only had one bloom open last time and it had only just opened. This is Jarrack Flyer Black Magic. It's all in the name, but the camera is going to lighten that. This is a very, very deep colour, and with the contrasting yellow near the centre and then the white edges near the top, it's a lovely Tolumnia. Now I've got this down in my books, in my records, as having bloomed before. Blowed if I can remember it blooming before. I don't remember seeing those blooms before. Anyway, it's very nice. Very nice. I would imagine that if you search long enough and hard enough, you might be able to find some fragrant on Tolumnias. But they're certainly not common. They tend to come in many shapes, well, not really many shapes, but many, many colours, from almost white. I don't think I've ever seen a pure white one, but with a lot of white, to almost black, right out through all the, deep reds through to the oranges, through to the yellows, through to the pale yellows and creamy colours, out in that range, and then again from the deep reds through all the pinks into the paler pinks, purples. So you've got all the colours there. But certainly Cattleyas, I think that was the only other orchid I had at one point, apart from Phalaenopsis. And then I've got my store-bought plants to grow in the house. They're already growing in the house. We've got those 3 Phalaenopsis and 2 Oncidium types. So those are already acclimatised to being in a house. They do fine. My very highlight orchids would probably just have to go. Also size, Out here, a big orchid, yeah, it takes up a lot of space. I mean, something like this. How are you going to put that in the house? Oh, come down, you toad. So it's hooked up on the one behind it. There we go. But again, when you get to something this big, in a house, where is that going to go? If you put it in a window, that's that window done. It would take up the whole window, wouldn't it? Guess what my next entry for the Orchid Society virtual competition is going to be? There's no contest, is there? There's nothing else in here that comes close. So that will be that. Am I being contrived? Yes. I've just filmed this for my Sunday chat. That proves that plant was in bloom at this point in time. I'm sure with this virtual competition some people are cheating. But, there's enough experience in the Orchid Society to know when this blooms naturally. Yeah. It would be no good putting that plant in for the competition in March. There would be enough experience in there to actually say those plants don't bloom in March. That's last year's picture. They would know. And the saga with Dendrobium senile not getting into the competition, it looks like it's just a genuine mistake. Nothing more than these are starting to go now. That's a shame, but nonetheless, we've still got a few left. And we've got this odd one that up this end of the plant that opened last. That will still be with us a while. These are going to go soon. This one's larger as well. But yeah, it just seems to have been just some sort of genuine mistake. I mean, the guy, he knows that I sent it to him because the intermediary, the guy who does the newsletter, who I first contacted to ask, did you include all of the entries or just a selection, because that was my first point of call, and he said, no, I included everything that I was given. So I said, well, you haven't been given my one. Can we try and work out what's happened and try and make sure it doesn't happen again? So that's where I started, and you know, basically he's been responsible for the magazine, the Top Orchid, which I now do, and you know, occasionally people have sent him things and then inquired why it didn't get in the magazine, and you know, you scratch your head and you think, I don't remember getting that. Well, in some cases people might think they've sent something and they didn't actually send it. You know, we're getting on a bit. Mistakes happen, but this looks like a genuine, you know, the guy's accepted that he must have received it because the email that I sent him with the original picture attached and his reply to it were forwarded to him. So he now knows he definitely got it, but he hasn't got a clue what's happened to it. So I don't know whether he actually checked his junk mail or his... yeah, but the thing is, he answered it, so it definitely arrived in the right place, and something's gone wrong. It's got deleted by mistake, put in a strange folder, never to be seen again, or something like that. But anyway, I've been asked to do a write-up on how I grow this. The simple answer is carefully. These are... I've never worked out why they're awkward, but they are. I've spoken to enough people, it's getting warm in here, I'll have to end soon. I've spoken to enough people that have tried this, and some people were quite successful and put on quite a lot of growth, and then they just keeled over. And I don't know why. I mean, one of mine did. I know exactly why that one went over. I gave it a full winter rest up in the bedroom. Yeah? It lost its humidity, stopped all watering and feeding. This is going back a bit. I don't do that sort of thing now. And it didn't come out the winter, basically. It didn't make it. Brown bread. So I killed it, and I know why, and it won't happen again. But yeah, I do look after this one a bit differently to what the scrolls, the ancient scrolls handed down from one to another from ancient times, without anybody checking to see if that is the best way or not. So I do grow this one a bit different, and I've been asked to do the write-up on how I look after this and get that sort of blooming, which I will do. But at the moment on this little beauty, I've got, I don't know, you won't be able to see them all because they do get muddled, but I've got 2 new growths coming out there, and then I'll have to go underneath. I've got another one coming out here, which you may or may not be able to see, next to this one. There's another new growth there, and then up here we've got a new growth here, and then we've got another one right down here, tiny little one there at the base, on the end of my finger, and another one up in there next to those older canes. So at the moment I've got, and there's 2 there actually, not 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 or 8 new growth starting on that. That's going to increase the size of that plant considerably, providing it carries on growing. Because for what is a relatively small plant, the roots on this are strange because they're quite thick and chunky. And not freely produced. It doesn't put out a lot of roots, this one, or mine doesn't. Which means it's always sort of just hanging on. If it hasn't got a substantial root system, then every root it's got has got to perform its function more than adequately to keep that thing going. Therein maybe lies the problem, that genetically the root system doesn't support the size and growth rate of the plant. That's possible, you know. Things do go wrong in evolutionary terms, leaving some plants a little dodgy, which may imply that they need damn near perfect conditions or they don't do well. And we know there's orchids in that category, don't we? Oh yes, yes, there are a few. Anyway, so your disaster recovery situation, have you got it covered? Have you got someone who could at least come in and throw water on your plants? I mean, the ideal person to look after mine would be my daughter. She's got no transport. She can't get here and back again just to water plants almost daily. I'd trust my sister to do it short term, but she probably wouldn't do it right, but she'd do something, you know. But then there's like I say, the building itself. I'm not here forever, and I've settled in here as far as this grow room is concerned. It functions. I can keep it functioning with not a huge amount of effort. Talking about effort, I've been doing this quite a bit lately. It's called cheating, and I'll show you the consequences. There's probably, is there still some water in there? Yeah. This is my giant sprayer. I haven't done this today yet, so this is part of what I want to do. And I can just do this. None of the plants have to come down. And in this type of heat out here, it doesn't matter if they drip on anything, they're still going to be dry. Yeah, so that's that shelf done. Forgot that one. You know, you see what I mean? This is cheating. And now I'll show you the consequences of cheating. There could be bugs on plants that I'm not seeing because I'm not getting them down. That's the downside. But then you get things like this happen. Up round the back of this shelf are 4 plants, which normally the front of this shelf comes off first and then I can reach under to get the others. But up behind here is a favourite. And since I last looked, it's done that. Consequences of not handling your plants daily or relatively regularly. That was it's strange actually, because this kick the sprayer over, this latest growth didn't open properly. So this one did. It's a normal bifoliate, yeah, and this one didn't open properly. This leaf didn't extend outwards. It didn't come out properly, but nonetheless the spike did. And that's going to have quite a lot of blooms on. And this is the little lemon drops crossed with something or other. This is the little lemon drops crossed with Encyclia vitellina. And it's the lovely, it either opens orange and turns yellow, or it opens yellow and turns orange. And it lasts a long time. And there's a lot of buds this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 or 9 buds on that spike. And they last well. Now that snuck up on me. I knew there was a spike down in between those leaves, but you know, the consequences of not getting the plant down and having a good look at it. And there could be other things like that lurking. But yeah, so using a sprayer is, I say, in my mind, I'm cheating. I'm not giving my plants the care I would normally give them. But I can do this all of my mounts in here in 10 minutes with that sprayer. I can mix up food in there if I want. Some of the water's going to get on the plants, whereas if I was watering them my normal way, that wouldn't happen. The plants would stay dry. In this temperature, this time of year, I don't care if my plants get soaking wet. It doesn't matter. They will dry. And talking of drying, I need to cut this off now because the real temperature here is now 30 degrees 0.1. This is it's getting a bit warm in here, and I need to cool it down for the plants. That's too warm. I've got no air circulation and my humidity's dropped to less than 50 in that time, you know, that we've chatted. So there you go. Think about some form of disaster. I'm not wishing that on anybody, but life, it happens, doesn't it? Yeah. So just think about how you would have to deal with a problem where you, the one who looks after all the orchids, is taken away for an amount of time for whatever reason. It might not even be that you're ill or you've got a problem, but somebody you know well or a family member needs your assistance permanently for a while, so you've got to move away. and go and help somebody else. So it's not necessarily your problem, somebody else's that you then get involved in. So some form of disaster covering, see how you get on. Anyway, that's my chat for today. No real subject, but as I said, if I had to select 10 out here, I'd have to be forced into the position to do it, and the main criteria would be why and where am I going with them. So where are these 10 going to end up? And then it would be, depending on that, it would be selecting the ones that are going to do best in that place, in that environment. That way I take, you know, a number of plants that I know I can look after and should do reasonably well. So there we go, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.